The Unseen Cost, Reclaiming Life Beyond the Bottle. Introduction. The resonant chime of crystal, the celebratory effervescence, the comforting warmth that unfurls within. A familiar cadence, is it not? The very anthem of our triumphs, a soothing balm for frayed nerves, a social solvent promising both camaraderie and ease. For countless decades, alcohol has been inextricably woven into the tapestry of our existence, invariably presented as the ultimate catalyst for relaxation, confidence, and unadulterated joy. It is the quiet companion for solitary evenings, the effervescent spark for boisterous gatherings, the solace sought in moments of sorrow. We are consistently assured of its digestive aid, its creative impetus, even its purported health advantages. So deeply ingrained is its presence in our cultural lexicon that to question its established role feels akin to challenging the immutable laws of physics. But what if this universally lauded elixir, this seemingly innocuous companion, is not the benevolent force we have been so assiduously led to believe? What if the very qualities we seek from it are, in their essence, mere phantoms, cleverly masking a far more insidious exaction? This book is dedicated to illuminating those concealed costs. It is an endeavor to meticulously peel back the layers of societal sanction and ingrained habit, thereby revealing the profound and often imperceptible ravages alcohol inflicts upon our physical well-being, the crystalline clarity of our minds, and our intrinsic capacity for an authentic, enduring satisfaction with life itself. For an extended period, much like many others, I navigated the currents of life with alcohol as an unwavering confidant. It embodied the persona of the effortless socialite, the indispensable crutch for navigating social landscapes, the convenient recourse for unwinding after the rigors of a demanding day. The initial promise of fostered connection and immediate relaxation felt undeniably potent. Yet, as the years unfurled, a subtle yet significant alteration began to manifest. The perceived benefits started to fray at the edges, unmasking a more somber undercurrent of burgeoning anxiety, persistent fatigue, and a creeping malaise of discontent that no amount of imbibing could truly assuage. I vividly recall the internal dialogue, just one more, or I've certainly earned this after such a trying day. But gradually, these perceived treats transmuted into necessities, and the fleeting relief they once offered dwindled with alarming rapidity. The true devastating impact of alcohol is seldom a cataclysmic, immediate consequence. It is, more often than not, a slow and insidious erosion, a gradual dimming of our inner luminescence. It manifests as the subtle, almost imperceptible decline in cognitive faculties, the persistent lassitude that no amount of slumber can rectify, the emotional volatility that renders genuine human connection an elusive aspiration. These are the costs that remain conspicuously absent from medical reports or curated social media highlight reels. They are the silent tolls levied upon the very essence of our being. It is akin to a perpetually leaking faucet. The day-to-day water loss may go unnoticed, but over an extended duration, it possesses the capacity to drain an entire reservoir. This narrative is not an isolated phenomenon, it is a refrain echoed across a multitude of lives. We are systematically conditioned to embrace the notion that alcohol is a harmless indulgence, a well-earned reward, an indispensable social requisite. However, the stark reality, as an increasing number of individuals are beginning to apprehend, is infinitely more intricate and, to be candid, demonstrably more detrimental. For generations, we have been indoctrified with the premise that even a modicum of alcohol can be salutary, a glass of wine for cardiovascular health, a pint for the purposes of relaxation. Yet, a burgeoning corpus of scientific evidence is now painting a starkly divergent panorama. What was once regarded as conventional wisdom is now being systematically dismantled, revealing that even moderate consumption carries discernible risks that we can no longer afford to dismiss. These hidden costs extend far beyond the purely physical realm. They insidiously infiltrate the very architecture of our minds, obfuscating our judgment, magnifying our anxieties, and systematically pilfering our mental acuity. They profoundly impact our emotional topography, relegating us to an incessant roller coaster of ephemeral highs and debilitating lows, and inexorably eroding our capacity for genuine, stable felicity. And perhaps most critically, they diminish our inherent ability to experience true, unadulterated joy and profound fulfillment in the tapestry of our lives. This book stands as an urgent summons to recognize these pervasive illusions for what they truly are: seductive mirages that artfully distract us from the pursuit of a more authentic and deeply satisfying existence. It posits that genuine transformation, true liberation, and an abiding sense of life satisfaction are not to be discovered at the bottom of a glass, but rather within the courageous and deliberate act of reclaiming our lives from the insidious grip of alcohol's unseen costs. Across the ensuing chapters, we shall embark on an immersive exploration into the scientific underpinnings, the psychological complexities, and the pervasive societal narratives that perpetuate our collective reliance on alcohol. We will meticulously dissect deeply entrenched myths, expose the clandestine mechanisms through which its damage is wrought, and illuminate the profound, often unanticipated, benefits that unfurl when we consciously choose to step away from the bottle. We will discover pathways to not only reclaim our physical vitality and sharpen our mental faculties, but also to cultivate a life imbued with authentic connection, unwavering purpose, and an enduring, unshakable joy. This is not a treatise on deprivation, it is an exploration of abundance. It is about the discovery of a life that is more vibrant, more lucid, and more profoundly gratifying than you ever dared to imagine. It is time to transcend the illusion and reclaim the extraordinary life that awaits you, unburdened by its silent, unseen cost. Chapter 1. The Hidden Impact of Alcohol. 1. The personal toll on health. The fleeting euphoria, the social lubrication, the momentary balm for worldly woes. Alcohol's immediate allure is potent. It promises an effortless shortcut to conviviality, to ease, to forgetting. Yet, beneath this ephemeral shimmer lies a subtle, insidious decay. Imagine a hairline fracture in a vessel. Imperceptible at first, it gradually widens, breaching the integrity, leading to an inevitable submersion. This is the insidious creep of alcohol's hidden costs, most starkly revealed in the quiet ravages it inflicts upon our physical well-being. Envision your body as a marvel of intricate engineering, a symphony of systems meticulously designed for optimal function, self-repair, and efficient processing. The regular introduction of alcohol is not merely a beverage consumed, it is a demand placed upon a singular, pivotal organ, the liver, to perform Herculean labor, and a systemic strain upon countless other components. The liver, our internal purification plant, bears the brunt of alcohol's metabolic breakdown. While possessing remarkable resilience, its capacity is finite. When perpetually inundated, it becomes overwhelmed. Initially, this distress may manifest as fatty liver disease, a seemingly benign accumulation of lipids within hepatic cells. The liver swells, its efficacy diminishing. Often, this stage passes unnoticed, its symptoms of vague fatigue, a phantom discomfort in the upper abdomen easily attributed to stress or insufficient rest. Yet this is merely the prelude. Persistent imbibement ignites inflammation, hepatitis, a more urgent alarm. Hepatic cells succumb to damage, initiating the insidious process of scarring, a phenomenon known as fibrosis. Picture a supple sponge transformed into a hardened, leathery mass. This is the liver's fate under the relentless assault of scarring, a condition termed cirrhosis. The resultant fibrotic tissue obstructs hepatic blood flow, crippling its vital functions. Detoxification falters, essential protein synthesis ceases, and nutrient processing becomes a laborious struggle. Cirrhosis represents a grave decline, and though the liver possesses a limited capacity for regeneration when the offending agent is removed, advanced stages are frequently irreversible, unleashing a cascade of dire complications, ascites, encephalopathy, and life-threatening hemorrhages. The liver's silent capitulation stands as a profound testament to alcohol's hidden costs, a clandestine warfare waged within its devastation. often unacknowledged until the damage is indelible. The assault, however, extends far beyond the liver. Our hearts, the very engines of our existence, also bear the brunt. The oft-cited notion of moderate alcohol's cardiovascular benefits crumbles under scrutiny, particularly in the context of regular, substantial consumption. Alcohol acts as a direct antagonist to the cardiovascular system, elevating blood pressure, a primary harbinger of heart disease and stroke. Consider your vasculature as a network of conduits. Sustained hypertension compromises their integrity, rendering them brittle, culminating in occlusive pathologies. Furthermore, alcohol disrupts the heart's intrinsic rhythm. The onset of arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats, can range from a disconcerting palpitation to a life-threatening event. Atrial fibrillation, frequently linked to a moderate drinking, escalates the risk of thromboembolic complications, with clots potentially migrating to the brain and precipitating a stroke. Beyond aberrant rhythms, alcohol can directly debilitate the myocardium, diminishing its contractile efficacy. This cardiac pathology, termed alcoholic cardiomyopathy, results in ventricular dilation and hypertrophy, compromising the heart's ability to perfuse the body's tissues. Thus, the fleeting sense of relaxation derived from a libation exacts a formidable price upon cardiac health, a hidden levy that can inexorably shorten one's lifespan. Then there is the brain, the seat of consciousness. Alcohol is a nototoxin, a chemical agent inimical to neuronal integrity. Upon entering the bloodstream, it permeates the cerebral landscape, disrupting intercellular communication. This neurochemical interference underlies the immediate impairment of judgment, coordination, and reaction time, the overt consequences of intoxication. Yet, the insidious damage penetrates far deeper. Chronic, habitual alcohol consumption precipitates a gradual atrophy of specific brain regions. The prefrontal cortex, the executive control center governing decision-making, executive function, and impulse modulation, exhibits particular vulnerability. This explains the formidable challenge of cessation. Even when the deleterious effects are manifest, the very faculty required for sound judgment is compromised. Memory formation suffers a grievous blow as alcohol interferes with hippocampal function, the nexus of new memory consolidation. This explains the phenomenon of blackouts, temporal amnesias, and can ultimately devolve into chronic mnemonic deficits and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, a devastating neurological disorder stemming from thiamine deficiency, a nutrient whose absorption alcohol actively impedes. The cognitive fog engendered by alcohol is not transient. It can coalesce into a persistent obfuscation of mental acuity, a profound hidden cost that erodes our very capacity for cogitation and recollection. Our gastrointestinal tract stands as another sentinel on the front lines of alcohol's relentless barrage. The delicate mucosa lining of the stomach and intestines is readily irritated by alcohol, leading to gastritis, inflammation characterized by pain, nausea, and emesis. Ulcerations, painful lesions that may precipitate hemorrhage, are also a common sequela. The pancreas, integral to digestive enzyme and insulin production, endures significant insult. Alcohol can trigger pancreatitis, a profoundly painful and perilous inflammation that manifests with severe abdominal distress, vomiting, and a compromised capacity for nutrient digestion and glycemic regulation. Moreover, alcohol significantly impedes the body's assimilation of vital nutrients. It directly damages the intestinal enterocytes responsible for absorbing essential vitamins, particularly the B-complex thiamine, folate, B12, vitamin C, and minerals such as calcium and magnesium. Consequently, even a nutritionally replete diet may fail to furnish the body with the requisite sustenance. This ensuing malnutrition renders the immune system vulnerable, perpetuates fatigue, and contributes to a panoply of other health detriments. It represents a dual assault, the direct toxicological impact of alcohol coupled with its impediment of the body's fundamental building blocks for health and repair. This is not merely a transient indisposition, it is a systemic subversion of the very physiological architecture that sustains life and vitality. Perhaps one of the most insidious ramifications is alcohol's profound suppression of the immune system. Our immunological defenses, tasked with combating pathogens like bacteria and viruses, are demonstrably weakened by chronic, heavy alcohol consumption. The body's capacity to mount an effective defense diminishes, rendering individuals more susceptible to infections and exacerbating their severity. This heightened vulnerability explains the increased incidence of pneumonia and tuberculosis among heavy drinkers. Compounding these risks, alcohol is unequivocally classified as a carcinogen by leading health organizations, its consumption demonstrably increasing the risk of multiple cancers, including those of the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, liver, breast, and colon. Alcohol can induce DNA damage and impair the body's intrinsic repair mechanisms. It can also dysregulate hormonal balance, such as elevating estrogen levels, thereby contributing to breast cancer etiology. Thus, in seeking solace from life's adversities, alcohol paradoxically engenders new, potentially lethal challenges. Beyond the discrete pathologies affecting specific organs, it is imperative to acknowledge the subtle, cumulative physiological alterations that transpire over years of regular alcohol intake, often overlooked or rationalized away. The dramatic sequelae liver failure, myocardial infarction can overshadow the quotidian attrition that is equally significant. Consider sleep. While alcohol may facilitate initial somnolence, it profoundly disrupts the natural sleep architecture, curtailing time spent in deep, restorative sleep stages. This chronic sleep deprivation precipitates pervasive malaise, impairing mood regulation, cognitive function, immune response, and overall capacity for daily engagement. The aesthetic consequences are also apparent. Alcohol's dehydrating effect manifests on the skin, rendering it dull, dry, and diminished in elasticity, exacerbating existing dermatological conditions and precipitating premature aging. Skeletal integrity is likewise compromised. Alcohol interferes with calcium absorption, crucial for bone density, potentially leading to osteoporosis and an increased propensity for fractures. Even muscular tissue succumbs to chronic heavy drinking, resulting in weakness and atrophy. These are not abrupt cataclysms, but a gradual, insidious erosion of physical vitality, often accepted as an inevitable consequence of aging, masking the underlying etiology. The question then arises, to what extent can the body's restorative mechanisms rebound once alcohol consumption ceases, and what factors modulate the trajectory and magnitude of this recovery? Herein lies a nascent hope, for the human organism possesses an extraordinary capacity for resilience. Upon cessation of alcohol intake, numerous physiological systems initiate a process of healing. The liver, as previously noted, exhibits regenerative potential. Fatty liver disease, when identified and addressed promptly, is frequently reversible, and even some degree of fibrotic scarring may attenuate. Hepatic inflammation subsides, and the organ's excretory function gradually reasserts itself. The cardiovascular system demonstrates remarkable recuperative abilities. Blood pressure often normalizes, and the incidence of arrhythmias typically declines. In cases of alcoholic cardiomyopathy, the cardiac muscle may regress in size and regain a portion of its contractile force. While complete reversion to a pre-drinking state may not always be achievable, significant functional improvement is frequently observed, thereby mitigating the risks of heart failure and stroke. The brain, though intricate, also exhibits signs of repair. Neurogenesis, the proliferation of new neurons, can occur. Cognitive faculties often improve, and mnemonic clarity may be restored. While certain long-term neurological deficits may prove recalcitrant, abstention provides the optimal milieu for cerebral self-repair and the reclamation of cognitive ground. The pervasive intellectual fog dissipates, and mental acuity can be rekindled. The digestive system reaps substantial benefits. Gastric mucosal inflammation resolves, and peptic ulcers may heal. Pancreatic function can improve, although severe damage may leave enduring sequelae. Crucially, nutrient absorption is significantly enhanced following the elimination of alcohol, enabling the body to replenish its vital reserves for cellular repair and systemic rejuvenation. The immune system also experiences a salutary resurgence, its efficacy augmenting as the body's overall health is restored. The pace and extent of this recovery are contingent upon a confluence of variables: the duration and intensity of alcohol consumption, the individual's baseline health status, age, and nutritional adequacy. Genetic predispositions also play a role. However, the paramount determinant remains the cessation of the insult. Each day of sobriety represents an opportunity for physiological restitution. This journey of recovery is a process, often fraught with challenges, including withdrawal syndromes, and demands patience. Nevertheless, the potential for reclaiming physical health is profound, a testament to the body's innate drive for survival and flourishing. While alcohol's immediate effects may appear benign or even desirable in the short term, the relentless erosion of our physical well-being represents a profound and often irreversible cost. This unremitting assault upon our physiology, however, is not an immutable trajectory. Comprehending the depth of this damage is the foundational step toward unlocking the body's extraordinary capacity for healing and the requisition of a vibrant, robust existence. The pilgrimage away from alcohol's hidden costs is, in essence, a rediscovery of our own intrinsic physical resilience and vitality. 2. Lifestyle changes and challenges. It is a curious truth, is it not? We tend to perceive alcohol's influence in stark, binary terms: abstinence or indulgence. And when we do indulge, our focus invariably falls upon the predictable aftermath: the throbbing hangovers, the missed professional obligations, the mortifying recaps of awkward mornings. Yet, the more profound narrative, the one that insinuates itself insidiously, is how alcohol, with a gentle, almost imperceptible touch, reshapes our entire world. It is not merely about the isolated incidents of excess, it is about the vast, hushed expanses of our lives that become subtly imbued with its presence. To choose to step away from the bottle is akin to awakening in a familiar chamber, only to discover that every piece of furniture has been artfully, silently rearranged. Suddenly, our days, our nights, our very modes of engaging with the world demand a complete re-education. This, then, is the crucible where true labor and genuine transformation commence. One of the most immediate, and perhaps the most startling, transformations manifests in the very fabric of our interpersonal connections. For an extended period, alcohol served as my default instrument for navigating the intricate terrain of social interaction. It was the facile solution to the discomfiture of silences, the swift balm for timidity, the universal vernacular that rendered strangers into fleeting confidantes. Consider the typical social tableau. Gatherings, repasts, even the most casual of rendezvous frequently revolved around the comforting weight of a glass in hand. It smoothed the rough edges of discourse, attenuated inhibitions, and conjured the illusion that everyone was participating in a more effervescent reality than might otherwise have been the case. This represents a classic illustration of alcohol's hidden costs, the deceptive notion that alcohol enhances social connection, when, in reality, it often cultivates a superficiality that, in the long arc of time, can lead to a more profound sense of isolation. The price exacted is paid in the currency of genuine intimacy, authentic self-expression, and the courage to be truly perceived. Upon my initial decision to abstain from drinking, I felt as though I had been handed a theatrical script from which all the dialogue had been systematically excised. Social occasions, which had once felt effortless or at least readily manageable with the aid of a few libations, now loomed as formidable challenges. The facile repartee, the shared laughter that seemed to erupt so spontaneously when each participant held a drink, now felt distant, almost beyond reach. I recall attending a friend's birthday celebration, and the initial hour was an exercise in exquisite agony. The room buzzed with conversation, punctuated by peals of laughter and the resonant clinking of glasses, while I stood adrift, an alien presence. My mind raced, a frantic engine attempting to devise suitable utterances, to integrate myself without betraying an air of awkwardness or desperation. It was as if a vital faculty, a fundamental component of human engagement, had been irrevocably lost. The transcript I reviewed echoed this sentiment precisely, articulating the transition from the persona of the party guy to a profound appreciation for a more select constellation of genuine friendships. It is a painful, yet indispensable, recalibration. One begins to apprehend that the connections forged in the crucible of shared intoxication were often erected upon the precarious foundation of ephemeral conviviality rather than on the bedrock of shared values or profound understanding. This seismic shift compels one to confront an unvarnished truth, the imperative to cultivate presence, a genuine and unadulterated presence, without the artificial emboldening that alcohol bestows. It necessitates a more attentive listening, a more discerning observation, and the cultivation of the fortitude to articulate one's own thoughts and sentiments, even when they feel imperfect. It represents a deliberate migration from a quantitative approach to socializing, engaging with a multiplicity of individuals, experiencing a profusion of superficial encounters, to a qualitative paradigm. One begins to actively seek out those profound dialogues, those moments of authentic communion with a select few, rather than the ephemeral validation derived from the clamor of the crowd. This path is not always strewn with ease. There are interludes of doubt, moments of acute apprehension that one is forfeiting the very essence of fun. Yet, gradually, inexorably, a different species of social contentment begins to emerge. It is quieter, perhaps less boisterous, but it is undeniably real. It is constructed upon a mutual respect, upon shared experiences unclouded by the pervasive haze of alcohol, and upon the simple, yet profound, rapture of connecting with another human being on a more substantive level. Beyond the intricate dance of social interactions, alcohol frequently becomes inextricably woven into the very tapestry of our avocations and passions. For years, my engagement with certain activities was inextricably yoked to the presence of a drink. The act of dining out, for instance, was invariably accompanied by wine. It transcended mere gustatory appreciation. It was about the ritual, the perceived amplification of flavors, or at least, the conviction that such enhancement occurred. The same held true for attending theatrical performances or participating in professional networking events. These were not merely diversions, they were frequently occasions designed for social engagement and the consumption of alcohol. The transcript alluded to this phenomenon, noting how dining, theater, and networking events felt diminished in their appeal when experienced sober. This constitutes another insidious facet of alcohol's hidden costs, the insidious manner in which it co-opts our passions, fostering the belief that these pursuits are only truly gratifying, or indeed viable, when alcohol is an integral component. The cost incurred here is the potential forfeiture of genuine engagement with endeavors we once cherished, or the inability to discover new sources of delight because they deviate from the established alcohol-tinted mold. Upon abstaining from alcohol, one is compelled to re-examine these pursuits with a critical eye. One might attempt to replicate the former experience, to frequent an esteemed restaurant, to order a meticulously prepared meal, and yet, the sensation is undeniably altered. The cuisine may retain its inherent quality, but the enchantment, the heightened sensory perception you once associated with it, has vanished. This can be a disheartening revelation. It can engender a palpable sense of loss, a perception that the world has become somewhat muted, its vibrancy diminished. You may find yourself questioning whether you will ever again truly savor these experiences. It is at this juncture that the arduous process of rediscovery genuinely commences. It involves the deliberate disentanglement of the activity itself from the crutch of alcohol. It is an invitation to pose the fundamental question: do I genuinely relish the taste of this particular wine with this specific dish, or do I merely indulge in the idea of enjoyment because I have habitually associated it with relaxation and pleasure? Confronting this challenge demands a conscious and concerted effort to engage with these activities on their own intrinsic merits. It may entail exploring new culinary establishments with a focused appreciation for the gastronomic artistry and the quality of the company, rather than an inordinate preoccupation with the wine list. It could involve seeking out a sober companion for shared experiences, an individual who can partake without the perceived necessity of alcohol. Furthermore, it presents an opportunity to explore entirely novel hobbies and interests that bear no pre-existing association with drinking. It is within this fertile ground that the unexpected dividends of sobriety begin to manifest. As the mind achieves a state of pristine clarity and the senses become acutely refined, one begins to perceive that world anew. The subtle nuances within a dish, the intricate details woven into the fabric of a theatrical production, the palpable authenticity of a human connection, these become more pronounced, more resonant, when they are not filtered through the opiate of alcohol. It is a gradual process of reconstructing one's relationship with the external world, of unearthing novel sources of gratification and fulfillment that are both genuine and enduring. Perhaps the most profound, yet frequently overlooked, recompense for relinquishing the allure of the bottle is the unveiling of a crystalline intellect and an acutely heightened sense of presence. This transcends the mere absence of grogginess or the lingering effects of a hangover. It signifies a fundamental metamorphosis within one's cognitive and emotional landscape. The transcript cited a reduction in insecurity, a steadier emotional equilibrium, a marked increase in productivity, and an enhancement of creative faculties. These are not merely abstract theoretical constructs. They are tangible advancements that reverberate through every dimension of one's existence. When alcohol is a regular fixture in one's routine, it functions as a persistent veil, dulling the sharpness of one's faculties, blurring the clarity of one's focus, and impeding access to one's full potential. One may perceive oneself as functioning, yet in reality, one is operating at a diminished capacity, one's thoughts less incisive, one's emotions more volatile, and one's ability to concentrate significantly attenuated. This constitutes a substantial component of alcohol's hidden costs, the insidious erosion of our mental acuity, our emotional resilience, and our inherent capacity for genuine, focused engagement with the richness of life. The clarity that accrues with sobriety is analogous to elevating the contrast on a television screen. Suddenly, the colors appear more vibrant, the details are rendered with sharper definition, and the entirety of the picture assumes a more coherent and comprehensible form. One's thoughts become more systematically organized, one's decision-making processes evolve into more deliberate and considered actions, and one finds oneself capable of tackling tasks with a degree of focus hitherto unexperienced in years. This augmented productivity is not merely about accomplishing a greater volume of work. It is about executing tasks with superior quality, imbued with greater intention and meticulous care. One can finally dedicate oneself wholeheartedly to projects that have languished in procrastination, acquire new proficiencies, or simply operate with enhanced efficacy in one's professional endeavors. Equally significant is the newfound emotional equilibrium. Alcohol has a proclivity for amplifying our emotional states, rendering us more ecstatic during periods of prosperity and more profoundly despondent during times of adversity. It is a tempestuous emotional roller coaster that ultimately leaves one utterly depleted. Sobriety, conversely, offers a more stable and predictable trajectory. One still experiences joy, sorrow, and the full spectrum of human emotions that imbue life with its richness, but these emotions are rendered more manageable, more nuanced. One is less likely to be destabilized by minor setbacks, and more readily able to savor moments of happiness without the incessant pressure to pursue the next ephemeral high. This emotional equanimity translates directly into the cultivation of more robust and stable relationships. One can emerge as a more dependable confidant, a more devoted partner, and a more grounded individual. The transcript's reference to diminished insecurity is particularly illuminating. When one ceases to rely on alcohol as a prop for one's self-assurance, a genuine sense of self-worth begins to blossom from within. One learns to embrace oneself, imperfections and all, and this internal confidence radiates outward, profoundly enhancing all interpersonal interactions. It is a prevalent misconception that a sober existence is inherently devoid of excitement. To external observers, or indeed, to oneself during the nascent stages of abstinence, it may appear as though one is forfeiting the spontaneous thrills and effortless pleasures that alcohol ostensibly affords. The transcript articulates this sentiment with remarkable precision. My life may appear less exciting externally, but is internally more satisfying and happy. This represents a pivotal juncture of internal conflict and, ultimately, triumphant resolution. The external perception of excitement is frequently superficial, a fleeting effervescence that rapidly dissipates, leaving behind a discernible void. Internal fulfillment, however, is profound, sustainable, and deeply rooted in a genuine sense of purpose and well-being. The inherent challenge lies in fundamentally reconfiguring our personal definition of what constitutes a well-lived life. For an extended duration, we may have conflated merriment with intoxication, and relaxation with the consumption of alcohol. Upon relinquishing these habits, we are compelled to actively redefine these very concepts. We come to understand that genuine contentment does not emanate from external stimuli that serve to anesthetize us to our own inner experiences, but rather from internal growth and authentic engagement with life. We discover that true happiness is not found in the relentless pursuit of euphoric highs, but in the cultivation of a quiet contentment, the discovery of meaning within the mundane rhythms of our daily existence, and the nurturing of strong, supportive interpersonal bonds. This internal paradigm shift is a gradual evolution, and it frequently necessitates confronting the deeply ingrained belief that our lives are somehow less valuable or less engaging in the absence of alcohol. It requires embracing a different genre of excitement, the exhilaration of self-discovery, the satisfaction of personal accomplishment, the profound sense of contributing to something of greater significance. It is a more subdued, yet infinitely more profound, form of exhilaration, one that does not exact the toll of a hangover. The environments we inhabit and the circumstances we encounter exert a colossal influence in shaping our ingrained habits, particularly concerning the consumption of alcohol. For years, my life was meticulously structured to accommodate its presence. Social engagements, specific dining establishments, even the pervasive ambience of certain urban locales, were implicitly designed around its consumption. The transcript masterfully illuminates this dichotomy, contrasting the entrenched drinking culture of New York with the health-conscious, activity-centric ethos of Los Angeles. This is not to assert the inherent superiority of one city over the other, but rather to underscore how our surroundings can either serve as a potent catalyst or a formidable impediment to our transformative efforts. Upon resolving to abstain from alcohol, one rapidly recognizes the potential necessity of actively curating or adapting one's environment. If one's social sphere was predominantly anchored in the milieu of bars and nightclubs, it becomes imperative to identify novel venues and activities to fill that resultant vacuum. If one's friends consistently propose a happy hour as their default method of reconnecting, it may be incumbent upon you to suggest alternative arrangements. This can feel like an arduous undertaking, particularly in the initial phases. It may entail the polite refusal of invitations that pose an undue temptation, or the navigation of situations where one feels conspicuously out of sync. Nevertheless, the deliberate modification of one's environment can emerge as an extraordinarily potent instrument in fortifying sobriety. Relocating to a milieu where healthy living and physical activity are the prevailing norms can substantially facilitate the sustained adherence to one's newly adopted lifestyle. Surrounding oneself with individuals who similarly champion sobriety, or at least demonstrably respect one's chosen path, can provide invaluable support. It is about orchestrating a life that organically aligns with one's aspirations, rather than engaging in a perpetual struggle against prevailing currents. It is about acknowledging that the external world can function as either a source of enticement or a bastion of strength, and making conscious choices to sculpt it in a manner that nurtures one's overall well-being. This deliberate re-engineering of our surroundings is not an act of evasion, it is the proactive construction of a life that actively champions the authentic self we are endeavoring to reclaim. As we gradually shed the familiar scaffolding of lifestyles predicated upon alcohol dependency, we begin to discern not merely the absence of a substance, but the burgeoning presence of a more authentic self. This nascent clarity. 3. Influence of environment and peers. One might readily assume that imbibing alcohol is a solitary act, a private indulgence confined to the inner sanctum of one's mind. Yet, this perspective fails to acknowledge the profound interconnectedness of our existence. We do not inhabit a vacuum, rather, our surroundings, the company we keep, and the very atmosphere of our chosen locales exert a formidable influence over our ingrained behaviors, particularly where alcohol is concerned. For a considerable period, this truth eluded me. I operated under the delusion of absolute autonomy, believing myself to be the sole architect of my choices. However, upon retrospection, the pervasive currents of my external world, subtly coaxing and at times forcefully propelling me toward the next libation, become undeniably clear. Consider, if you will, the stages upon which our lives unfold. Is it not often the university campus, a crucible of burgeoning independence and uninhibited social exploration? Or perhaps the professional arena, where the post-work libation stands as a quasi-sacred rite, a tacit prerequisite for seamless integration into the collective? Even familial reunions frequently find their focal point in the resonant clink of glasses and the subsequent unburdening of inhibitions. These are not inert backdrops. They are often environments meticulously constructed with alcohol as an integral component. It is presented as the panacea for celebration, the balm for weariness, the effortless conduit for connection. This ceaseless immersion, this profound entanglement of alcohol with our social fabric, cultivates an insidious sense of the commonplace. It renders questioning its role an arduous undertaking, and envisioning a life unanchored from its presence a Herculean feat. To resist becomes akin to battling a relentless tide. The path of least resistance invariably leads to acquiescence. It is precisely at this juncture that the insidious creep of alcohol's hidden costs begins, its presence largely unacknowledged. We may overlook the subtle metamorphosis from a casual enjoyment of a drink to an emergent dependency for our surroundings, conspire to perpetually affirm that alcohol is the sine qua non of camaraderie, levity, and acceptance. It serves undeniably as a social lubricant, but what transpires when this very lubricant begins to erode the delicate machinery of our being? The hidden costs extend far beyond the realm of physical well-being, though that constitutes a significant dimension. They encompass the insidious erosion of our mental acuity and our capacity for forging authentic, profound connections, a consequence of relentless external pressures. When alcohol becomes the default, we are deprived of the opportunity to cultivate alternative modes of socialization, of coping, of simply existing with grace and presence, both within ourselves and in relation to others. Then there looms the formidable power of peer pressure, a force not always manifested through overt coercion. More frequently, it operates with a disquieting subtlety. It is the knowing glance that registers your choice of a non-alcoholic beverage, the gentle raillery that accompanies your abstention from a round, the pervasive feeling that to forego alcohol is to forfeit full participation, to deny oneself genuine enjoyment. The primal human yearning for belonging, for validation from our peers and colleagues, is a potent driver. When alcohol is perceived as the indispensable key to this acceptance, its allure becomes nearly irresistible. I recall my undergraduate years, when the mantle of the party guy was almost a coveted insignia. It was a persona I assiduously cultivated, a performance readily amplified by my companions. If I was not the purveyor of libations, the guarantor of everyone's refreshment, or the purveyor of the most boisterous jests after a few spirits, I felt adrift, a lagging participant. It was a visceral fear of exclusion, not merely from the immediate revelry, but from the entire social tableau that seemed inextricably bound to alcohol. This persona, this notion of being the effervescent centerpiece of any gathering, was erected upon a foundation of alcohol consumption. And the more I embodied this role, the more my environment and my peers affirmed its desirability, the more deeply I internalized the conviction that alcohol was an indispensable component of my very identity. This serves as a quintessential illustration of alcohol's hidden costs. What appears to be a social advantage or a spirited persona is in reality a gilded cage. The ultimate cost is the forfeiture of the authentic self, the quiet moments of contemplation, the lucidity of thought, all sacrificed upon the altar of perceived popularity and unbridled mirth. These environmental cues are ubiquitous. They transcend mere human interaction, permeating the very locales we inhabit. The resonant strains of music and cascades of laughter spilling from a bar on a Friday evening can ignite a potent craving. Even the temporal rhythm of the day can serve as a catalyst. For many, as the clock advances past a certain hour, the contemplation of a drink becomes an almost automatic response. Our surroundings can thus become deeply ingrained triggers. This phenomenon became starkly apparent when I transitioned from the vibrant milieu of New York City to the sprawling expanse of Los Angeles. For me, New York represented an environment seemingly designed for the consumption of alcohol. Bars were omnipresent, social engagements invariably featured alcohol, and the relentless pace of urban existence seemed to beckon a particular brand of escapism that a drink could readily provide. It was, in a peculiar sense, an alcoholic's paradise, not in the sense of universal affliction, but because the environment rendered alcohol both effortlessly accessible and profoundly normalized. My relocation to Los Angeles ushered in a palpable shift. The prevailing culture felt more diffused, more oriented toward outdoor pursuits, vehicular travel, and a diverse array of social congregations. Suddenly, the perpetual proximity of bars and the ingrained habit of pausing for a drink after work ceased to be an automatic reflex. The environmental triggers were markedly attenuated. This was not a conscious decision in its nascent stages, but the alteration of my surroundings organically precipitated a reduction in my alcohol consumption. It illuminated the profound extent to which my habit was tethered to the external landscape rather than being solely dictated by an intrinsic yearning for alcohol itself. The hidden cost here was the unwitting residency within an environment that actively fostered a behavior that was subtly debilitating me, a fact I remained oblivious to due to its pervasive ordinariness. This brings us to a pivotal realization, the pervasive illusion of social necessity. We frequently internalize the conviction that alcohol is, in some arcane manner, indispensable for certain social interactions. We may persuade ourselves that we require it to surmount timidity, to exhibit wit, to regale with amusing anecdotes, or simply to blend seamlessly and avoid the discomfort of awkwardness. This conviction is not merely an individual construct, it is powerfully reinforced by the collective of people and places that surround us. The party guy persona I previously alluded to was, in essence, a coping mechanism that metastasized into a self-destructive identity. I, along with my peers, had convinced myself that I required alcohol to embody that role. Yet, the deeper verity, a truth I came to apprehend only in retrospect, is that if one necessitates alcohol to derive pleasure from another's company, it is unlikely that genuine enjoyment is present. The authentic connection, the unvarnished interaction, is effectively drowned out by the intoxicant. The hidden cost, therefore, is the obliteration of genuine human connection, supplanted by a superficial camaraderie lubricated by a substance. The prevailing cultural milieu can erect formidable barriers to liberation. If one endeavors to curtail or entirely abstain from drinking, resistance is often encountered. Friends may express bewilderment. They might perceive you as dull or as harboring a judgmental disposition. Your established social constellations may contract, as the shared activities were so deeply intertwined with alcohol consumption. This constitutes a significant hidden cost, the potential for isolation that accompanies the adoption of an alternative trajectory. The imperative for peer acceptance is so profound that many individuals will persist in their drinking habits, even when cognizant of their detrimental impact, solely to circumvent the sting of social ostracization. They are, in essence, sacrificing their long-term well-being for the ephemeral solace of conformity. The analytical queries that arise from this contemplation are of considerable depth. How do the specific social and environmental mores of a particular life stage, such as university or the nascent phases of one's career, engender a seemingly inescapable alcohol culture? It is a question of rituals, the welcoming assemblies, the celebratory graduations, the ubiquitous Friday night gatherings. It is a question of language, the ubiquitous invitation, "Let's grab a drink," the weary pronouncement, "It's been a long week, we deserve this." It is a question of visual stimuli, the ubiquitous presence of posters advertising parties adorned with beer imagery, the pervasive reach of alcohol advertising. These are not haphazard occurrences. They are deliberate or incidental reinforcements that serve to normalize drinking and establish it as default. The subtle mechanisms are pervasive. The implicit pressure to acquiesce when offered a drink, the unspoken expectation to match the group's pace, the tendency for conversations to gravitate toward shared drinking experiences. It is a constant murmur, a background hum that intimates alcohol as an indispensable element of life's soundtrack. And in what ways does the desire for peer validation actively contribute to the perpetuation of drinking habits, even when these habits begin to inflict personal harm? This is where the dread of being left behind, the apprehension of being perceived as uninteresting or unsociable, transforms into a potent impetus. Envision a gathering where the consumption of alcohol is universal and you are the sole individual bearing a water bottle. You might experience a profound sense of awkwardness, of being an anomaly, of being subjected to scrutiny. This sensation can be so acutely uncomfortable that it eclipses any rational apprehension of alcohol's adverse effects. You might rationalize, "It's merely one drink," or "I'll stop after this one," yet the underlying motivation is frequently that avoidance of this social disquietude. The hidden cost here is the erosion of self-trust. You possess an intrinsic awareness that you do not require that drink, yet the social pressure is so overwhelming that you override your own intuitive guidance. Furthermore, consider this proposition. When an individual perceives the detrimental ramifications of alcohol, how do their pre-existing social circles and environments either bolster or impede their endeavors to alter their drinking behavior? This represents a critical juncture. If your closest companions are also prodigious drinkers, and your social life is inextricably linked to bars and revelries, modifying your habits becomes an exceptionally formidable challenge. They may fail to comprehend your desire for abstinence, or they might even endeavor to undermine your efforts, perhaps out of their own insecurities or a fear of disrupting the established dynamic. Their pronouncements might include, "Oh, come on, just one won't hurt," or "You're no fun anymore." It is within this context that the environment actively obstructs progress. Conversely, if you are surrounded by supportive friends or if you proactively seek out new environments and social affiliations that eschew alcohol as a central element, perhaps a hiking expedition, a literary salon, or simply companions who have also embraced sobriety, then your environment can transform into a potent ally. It is about discovering individuals who celebrate alternative forms of connection, different manifestations of enjoyment. The hidden cost of remaining ensconced within an unsupportive environment is the perpetual struggle, the profound sense of solitude in your endeavors. The advantage of cultivating a supportive milieu is that it validates your choice, fosters accountability, and demonstrates that a life of fulfillment beyond the bottle is not merely attainable, but also rich with genuine connection and profound enjoyment. The transition from the effervescent party guy of my 20s to the discerning recognition of that identity's destructive nature in my 30s served as a stark illustration of this principle. What was once lauded as an asset, the individual capable of perpetually orchestrating merriment, fueled by alcohol, transmuted into an encumbrance. The attendant weight gain, the disrupted sleep patterns, the pervasive mental fog, the missed opportunities for profound dialogue, these were the hidden costs that ultimately began to outweigh the perceived social advantages. The environment that had once celebrated my imbibing now served as a poignant reminder of the damage it had wrought. The validation I had so ardently craved from my peers had, in time, become a source of profound mortification. While the external influences of our environment and our peers can exert a powerful gravitational pull toward the bottle, the journey toward reclaiming one's life from its dominion ultimately necessitates an internal recalibration. This internal metamorphosis frequently commences with a more profound comprehension of how alcohol distorts our perception of ourselves and our inherent capabilities, thereby ushering us into the subsequent critical exploration, the erosion of mental clarity and emotional resilience. 4. Breaking free from social norms. The ubiquitous presence of alcohol has rendered it as commonplace as the very air we inhale. Consider a birthday devoid of a celebratory toast, a holiday gathering where no hand cradles a glass of wine or beer, a casual Friday night with friends that bypasses the local pub. Such scenarios feel almost aberrant, do they not? As if a crucial element for conviviality and genuine human connection is conspicuously absent. This pervasive omnipresence, this subtle yet insistent norm, has cemented drinking as the default mechanism for socializing, intricately woven into the very fabric of our celebrations, our moments of repose, and even our quotidian existence. For an extended period, I saw myself as the architect of social energy, the quintessential life of the party, adept at eliciting laughter and fostering an atmosphere of uninhibited ease. Alcohol, in truth, was my clandestine instrument. It seemed to possess the uncanny ability to smooth away the rough edges of interaction, not merely for myself, but for all those in my orbit. It served as the catalyst for connection, dissolving awkward silences and orchestrating effortless conversational flow. This was the perceived boon, the immediate gratification that perpetually drew me to the allure of the drink. It felt akin to subscribing to a social covenant, a prerequisite for acceptance, for integration into the collective. Yet, the concealed repercussions of this ceaseless social lubricant often remain obscured. Alcohol is presented to us as the panacea for social apprehension, the alchemical elixir that unlocks latent confidence and enhances our likability and engagement. It pledges to dismantle inhibitions, to foster a sense of ease within our own skin, and to forge more profound bonds with others. And for a time, it appears to fulfill these promises. We may indeed feel more audacious, more witty, more gregarious. Conversations might unfurl with greater fluidity, and we might genuinely believe we are forging authentic connections. This, however, is the seductive mirage, the tantalizing prospect that alcohol dangles before us. The unvarnished truth, however, is far more insidious and, in the long trajectory of life, profoundly detrimental. That ephemeral surge of chemical-induced confidence is fleeting. It does not cultivate genuine self-assurance. It merely serves to camouflage underlying insecurities. When we delegate the navigation of social landscapes to alcohol, we are, in essence, forfeiting the opportunity to cultivate authentic human connection. We are inadvertently conditioning ourselves to rely on a substance. We are foregoing the chance to hone our innate social faculties, to master the art of being present and engaged, without the crutch of chemical assistance. While conversations may flow, do they possess true depth? Does the laughter resonate with genuine mirth, or is it merely the byproduct of a transient chemical elevation? It is here that the hidden costs of alcohol begin to manifest with stark clarity. The immediate, perceived advantage of ease and connection is exacted at the cost of authentic self-reliance and the cultivation of genuine relationships. This dependency breeds a peculiar form of social entrapment. We begin to internalize the belief that we are incapable of being engaging, interesting, or even simply present without the aid of a drink. And then there is the pervasive fear, the dread of judgment, the apprehension of being perceived as dull, the anxiety of missing out on something vital if we are not part of the drinking fraternity. This social pressure exerts a formidable influence. We might find ourselves accepting libations we do not truly desire, or prolonging our attendance at events beyond our inclination, merely to maintain a facade. The seemingly innocuous question, "Why aren't you drinking?" can assume the weight of an accusation, a direct challenge to our social standing. I vividly recall standing at gatherings, caught in an internal maelstrom. A part of me yearned to set aside my drink, to simply savor the conversation or the music for what they were. But another, more vociferous part, whispered, "What will they think? They'll brand you as uptight. They'll deem you unenjoyable." This fear, this relentless internal scrutiny of how we are perceived by others, can be utterly exhausting. It compels us to conform to expectations that are not our own, to inhabit a persona that is fundamentally inauthentic. And the more we perpetuate this charade, the more formidable it becomes to envision ourselves existing beyond its confines. This is precisely how alcohol becomes inextricably entwined with our identity. For a significant number of us, myself included, our drinking habits evolve into a salient component of our self-perception and, consequently, how we believe we are viewed by others. I was not merely Alex. I was Alex, the aficionado of fine spirits, Alex, the capable companion at the bar, Alex, perpetually ready for an extended revelry. This carefully curated persona felt akin to an impervious shield. It was immeasurably easier to embody the individual always prepared for a drink than to confront the occasional feelings of awkwardness or uncertainty. However, this constructed identity, this party guy persona, transcends the realm of a benign social accessory. It metamorphoses into a gilded cage. It imposes limitations on our potential for growth and our capacity to experience the full spectrum of life. When our social interactions are dictated by the presence or absence of alcohol, we are not truly engaging with the world. We are interacting with a chemically altered facsimile of it and, by extension, a chemically altered version of ourselves. The laughter may be more boisterous, but does it possess comparable depth? The connections may feel immediate, but do they endure? The energy may be elevated, but is it sustained by something tangible or merely a transient chemical euphoria? The true liberation commences when we begin to interrogate these deeply ingrained societal conventions. We must pose the fundamental question to ourselves: are these dictates genuinely serving our well-being? Are they enriching our lives, or are they merely habitual patterns we have inadvertently adopted? The profound realization that these norms are not immutable laws of nature, but rather learned behaviors and societal expectations, is an immensely empowering revelation. It signifies our inherent capacity to make alternative choices. We can opt out of the automatic assumption that every social assembly necessitates alcohol. We possess the agency to redefine what constitutes enjoyment, connection, and belonging. This does not imply an embrace of hermitage or a wholesale rejection of social engagement. Quite the contrary. It signifies a conscious decision to engage with the world on our own terms, with unclouded awareness. It entails prioritizing authenticity over performance, and genuine connection over superficial camaraderie. When I initially began to extricate myself from the pervasive presence of alcohol in my social life, it was an experience fraught with discomfort. There were moments of awkwardness, instances where that familiar fear resurfaced. I would find myself questioning whether others were noticing, whether they perceived me as being difficult. But then, a subtle transformation began to occur. I started to perceive the nuanced distinctions. Conversations, when I was genuinely present and sober, felt more resonant. I could truly listen deeply and attentively to what others were articulating. I could retain the minutiae of our interactions, the subtle nuances of their facial expressions. I was no longer merely anticipating my turn to speak or struggling to recall prior pronouncements. I was, quite simply, present, fully immersed. And the relationships that began to deepen were those forged upon the bedrock of genuine presence, rather than a chemical haze. I found myself drawn to individuals who valued candid discourse and shared experiences, rather than solely the ephemeral thrill of the next drink. The focus irrevocably shifted from the sheer quantity of social engagements to their inherent quality. It was about cultivating a few profound, meaningful dialogues with cherished friends, as opposed to engaging in superficial exchanges with a multitude of acquaintances. This represented a fundamental paradigm shift, a reordering of priorities that alcohol had long obscured. The illusion of alcohol, as a social imperative, stands as one of the most pervasive and damaging facets of its hidden cost. It perpetuates our entanglement with a mode of interaction that frequently leaves us feeling more disconnected, less ourselves, and ultimately, less fulfilled. By consciously choosing to extricate ourselves from these entrenched norms, we unlock the potential for a richer, more authentic social existence. We discover that true belonging does not necessitate a beverage. It demands our presence, our candor, and our willingness to be truly perceived, to be genuinely seen by others. as we begin to recognize the alcohol-fueled social milieu as largely a construct, a tapestry of expectations we have been indoctrinated to uphold, the pathway toward genuine connection and self-acceptance gradually illuminates. This is not an act of withdrawal from the world or an embrace of isolation. It is a deliberate choice to step into the world on our own terms, imbued with our own clarity. It is the discovery that true belonging, that profound sense of being an integral part of something, is not contingent upon the presence of a drink in hand. It is predicated on being authentically present, on possessing the willingness to reveal our unvarnished selves to others. This newfound lucidity, this liberation from the invisible shackles of social obligation, marks the inception of the genuine work of rebuilding our lives. It empowers us to scrutinize our priorities, our relationships, and our daily routines with a fresh perspective. It assists us in constructing a life that not only presents a favorable exterior, but one that resonates with profound fulfillment and an unwavering congruence with our authentic selves, unclouded by the spectral fog of social obligation and the deceptive allure of the bottle. Chapter 2. Embracing a New Life. 1. Gaining mental clarity. For years, I harbored a fallacy that alcohol served as a master key. A key, I believed, that could unlock the gates of creativity, lubricate the gears of awkward social exchanges, and generally imbue life with a more luminous hue, or at the very least, a less somber shade. When confronted with an intractable problem, I would often placate myself with the notion that a drink would grant me a novel perspective. Facing a social engagement, a few libations seemed the sole viable conduit between my inherent reticence and the imperative to connect. It felt as though I were gaining something, as though my cognitive faculties were sharpening, becoming more nimble. This was, in retrospect, one of alcohol's most insidious hidden costs, the seductive illusion that it was enhancing my thinking, amplifying my feelings, and deepening my presence, when in truth, it was orchestrating the precise antithesis. The notion that alcohol refines our intellect is a potent deception. It operates akin to a funhouse mirror. It contorts what already exists, compelling us to believe we are perceiving something novel, something superior. When I would imbibe before attempting to write or unravel a complex issue, it was not that the alcohol was spontaneously conjuring brilliant insights. Rather, it was systematically dismantling my inhibitions. It was silencing that internal arbiter, that voice of discernment that might caution, "That's a flawed premise," or "This approach is unproductive." Consequently, it felt like progress. I was less apprehensive about articulating any nascent thought, any half-formed sentence. Yet, the vast majority of those thoughts, those sentences, were merely static. They were not the crystalline, incisive ideas for which I yearned. They were the disjointed ramblings of a mind chemically nudged into a state of diminished criticality. Consider this analogy. Imagine endeavoring to absorb a sublime musical composition while a persistent, low-frequency hum intrudes. Alcohol is that hum. It is not so overpowering as to halt your appreciation of the melody, but its presence is constant, subtly disruptive. It muddies the melodic line, blurs the sharp intonations, and impedes a full appreciation of the sonic richness. Within our mental landscape, that music represents our innate capacity for clear thought, for sustained focus, for accurate recall, and for grasping intricate concepts. The hum is the effect of alcohol. It does not merely induce relaxation, it demonstrably decelerates neural signaling. It compromises the efficacy of inter-brain region communication. Thus, when I perceived myself as operating with enhanced creativity or insight post-consumption, I was, in reality, merely experiencing a transient, chemically induced abatement of my own judgment. It mimicked clarity, but it was, in fact, a miasma that fostered the delusion of enhanced perception by diminishing my awareness of what I was failing to perceive. This pervasive self-deception constitutes a foundational element of alcohol's concealed liabilities. We persuade ourselves that the confidence we experience after a drink is authentic, when it is frequently nothing more than a deficit in self-awareness. We attribute the swift, often jocular, pronouncements we make to intellectual acuity, when they are frequently mere impulsive utterances that bypass the crucible of deliberate consideration. The insidious paradox is that the more we lean upon this specious sense of lucidity, the more we erode our inherent capacity to achieve it. Our brains possess a remarkable adaptability. When we perpetually inundate them with alcohol, they begin to recalibrate. They learn to function within the presence of alcohol. This implies that our default, sober cognitive processes begin to feel sluggish or even profoundly disquieting as they no longer represent the established baseline to which our brains have become habituated. The ultimate consequence is a dependence on alcohol not for augmentation, but merely to attain a semblance of normalcy. It required an extensive period for me to comprehend that what I was forfeiting was not solely my physical well-being or my interpersonal connections. I was incrementally relinquishing my own mind. I was bartering genuine mental acuity for a fleeting, artifice-laden exhilaration. The creativity I attributed to alcohol was often merely a reduced threshold for self-criticism regarding my own mediocre output. The social ease I experienced was a superficial veneer masking profound underlying insecurity. I was so consumed with the pursuit of this phantom of amplified thought and feeling that I remained oblivious to the fact that I was actively dulling my own innate capabilities. This is precisely where the concept of alcohol's hidden costs assumes its gravitas. It transcends mere physical deterioration, though that is undeniably substantial. It encompasses the gradual attrition of our cognitive faculties, our emotional intelligence, and our capacity for authentic self-reflection. What we erroneously perceive as a beneficial instrument is, in actuality, a rapacious thief, pilfering our mental clarity and substituting it with a distorted reflection. However, here resides the profoundly uplifting revelation: this degradation is not indelible. As I discovered, and as countless others have attested, the excision of alcohol from one's life initiates a restorative process within the brain. It is akin to silencing that incessant hum. Abruptly, the symphony of one's own thoughts can be perceived with heightened clarity. This is not a pursuit of superhuman intellect. It is the reclamation of one's natural, baseline cognitive function. It is the process of returning to the sharp, focused, and capable individual you were intrinsically designed to be, prior to alcohol clouding your perception. For me, this restoration was not an instantaneous metamorphosis. It was an evolutionary progression unfolding over time. As the book's Genesis profile elucidates, the body may require up to a year to completely reset. This is not an indictment of failure nor a pretext for despair. It serves as a potent testament to the profound impact alcohol can exert upon our systems and, conversely, to the remarkable resilience of our bodies and minds when afforded the opportunity to recuperate. During those initial months of sobriety, I frequently experienced a sense of disorientation. The crutch upon which I had long leaned had been removed. My thoughts occasionally felt somewhat disarrayed, my concentration not consistently unwavering. Yet, beneath this initial period of adjustment, a more profound transformation was occurring. My brain was engaged in a slow, steady process of self-repair. What does this recuperation manifest as in practical terms? It signifies an amelioration of your memory. You will find yourself recalling specific details from conversations, locating misplaced keys without a frantic search, and retaining information from texts or meetings with greater facility. Your capacity to focus on tasks, whether professional endeavors, personal pursuits, or even interpersonal dialogues, will experience a significant enhancement. You will be able to engage with a problem for extended durations, delving deeper without succumbing to the urge for distraction. Decision-making processes will also become more lucid. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by choices, or precipitating impulsive decisions driven by immediate gratification, a common sequela of alcohol-induced impairment, you will be capable of evaluating options with greater deliberation, factoring in long-term ramifications. One of the most transformative shifts I observed was the advent of an incredibly even-keel emotional state. Prior to sobriety, my emotional landscape was frequently a tempestuous affair. A minor setback could precipitate a descent into anxiety or frustration, often exacerbated by alcohol's disruption of my emotional regulation. A perceived triumph might trigger an exaggerated sense of euphoria, also amplified by consumption. In the absence of alcohol, my emotional spectrum attained a far greater equilibrium. I could experience joy without it veering into mania, and sorrow without it feeling like an existential crisis. This emotional equanimity is a direct consequence of a brain no longer subjected to the relentless bombardment of a substance that distorts emotional signals. This leads us to the subsequent critical dimension of regaining mental clarity, a sharpened emotional intelligence, and an enhanced capacity for self-awareness. Alcohol does not merely anesthetize our sensory perceptions, it numbs our emotions. It cultivates a false sense of bravado, a manufactured serenity, or a fleeting surge in sociability, all of which preclude a genuine understanding of our internal states and their origins. When one engages in regular drinking, it becomes facile to evade confronting difficult emotions. If anxiety surfaces, one drinks. If loneliness encroaches, one drinks. If inadequacy takes hold, one drinks. Alcohol transforms into a formidable barrier, impeding the development of salutary coping mechanisms and the comprehension of the fundamental causes of one's distress. Sobriety conversely dismantles that barrier. Abruptly, one is confronted directly with one's emotions, raw and unvarnished. Initially, this can feel overwhelming. It is akin to finally opening a window in a stifling room. The influx of fresh air can be bracing. However, as one learns to coexist with these feelings, to acknowledge them without judgment, and to apprehend their genesis, the cultivation of genuine emotional intelligence commences. You become more attuned to your internal states, your personal triggers, and your habitual behavioral patterns. This heightened self-awareness is an invaluable asset. It empowers you to make conscious decisions regarding your responses to circumstances rather than reacting impulsively. This newfound clarity extends its influence to our interpersonal relationships. During my period of active drinking, my friendships often felt perfunctory. I realized that I was frequently drawn to individuals who offered a particular brand of companionship during our imbibing, a boisterous, effervescent energy that served to obscure a deficiency in authentic connection. Upon achieving sobriety, I discovered that many of those friendships lacked enduring substance. I could no longer participate in the same manner, and I recognized that the shared activity of drinking had served as the primary adhesive. This was a difficult, yet essential, realization. It compelled me to confront the fact that I had been content with superficial connections. As the transcript aptly notes, I began to disengage from friendships with individuals who offered boredom when drinking. This assertion might strike as severe, but it is a direct consequence of attaining lucidity. When one is not employing alcohol to fill silences or anesthetize awkwardness, one begins to perceive relationships in their unadorned reality. You become capable of discerning who genuinely enriches your existence and who merely serves as a companion for a shared habit. This fosters a potent form of self-preservation, the capacity to reject conflicting opportunities and bullshit. Your values, your priorities, and the boundaries of your acceptance become demonstrably clearer. You are no longer shielded by the haze of alcohol, which previously served to rationalize remaining in situations or relationships that were ultimately detrimental. This emergent clarity also translates directly into augmented focus and enhanced productivity. Reflect upon the days that followed a night of revelry. You awaken with a throbbing head, a clouded intellect, and a pervasive lack of motivation. Your capacity for concentration is severely compromised. Tasks that would ordinarily require an hour might extend into an entire afternoon, punctuated by frequent interruptions and an urgent craving for caffeine. Alcohol's hidden costs manifest as squandered hours, missed deadlines, and a pervasive sense of being perpetually behind. In sobriety, the inverse occurs. Absent the physical and mental toll exacted by alcohol, your energy reserves stabilize. Your focus sharpens. You can dedicate sustained attention to the immediate demands of your tasks. I was astonished by the sheer volume of what I could accomplish within a sober day. What once felt like an insurmountable mountain of work became manageable. I found myself not merely completing tasks, but executing them with superior quality. The creativity I had erroneously believed alcohol had unleashed was, in fact, dormant within my sober consciousness, awaiting its moment. When I abstained from drinking, that creativity flourished. I could approach projects with a fresh perspective, generate novel ideas, and perceive solutions that had previously eluded me. This was not a miraculous enhancement. It was the simple, profound outcome of a brain operating at its optimal capacity, liberated from the dulling influence of alcohol. Thus, how might readers actively discern and quantify these improvements in their own lives? It commences with the conscious cultivation of awareness. Maintain a journal. Document your daily mental and emotional states. Are you capable of sustained focus for extended periods? Do you find yourself recalling information with greater ease? Are your moods more stable? Are you able to engage in conversations with greater depth, devoid of the urge to escape? These are all tangible indicators of your brain's restorative process and the resurgence of your mental clarity. Consider the analytical inquiries we have posed. How did the perceived benefits of alcohol serve to mask deeper cognitive impairments? For instance, I once subscribed to the belief that drinking facilitated brainstorming by fostering an openness to unconventional ideas. However, in retrospect, those unconventional ideas were frequently merely random thoughts that I would not have pursued had I been sober and capable of critical evaluation. The act of drinking instilled the sensation of exploring possibilities, but in reality, it merely diminished my discernment. I was misinterpreting impulsivity for creativity. Furthermore, alcohol rendered me less cognizant of my own limitations. I would erroneously believe myself capable of tackling a complex project after a few drinks, only to discover the subsequent day that I had committed significant errors or had fundamentally misunderstood the undertaking. This was not augmented cognition, it was impaired judgment masquerading as bold conceptualization. Beyond the subjective sensation of feeling better, what are the observable improvements? They reside in the minutiae. They are evident in the capacity to recall the specific appellation of an individual encountered briefly months prior. They are discernible in the celerity with which you can resolve a logic puzzle or a crossword. They are manifest in the sustained attention you can dedicate to a complex literary work or an extensive documentary. They are present in the clarity of your decisions. 2. Strengthening personal relationships. The pervasive notion of alcohol as a social lubricant, a catalyst for breaking the ice, easing awkward exchanges, and fostering camaraderie among colleagues or nascent acquaintances, is a narrative many of us have long subscribed to. For a considerable period, I too embraced this belief, perceiving it as an indispensable instrument for navigating the intricate currents of human interaction. In social settings, the absence of a drink in my hand rendered me feeling exposed, somewhat maladroit, and out of sync with the prevailing mood. The surrounding hum of conversation seemed to acquire a more effortless cadence, laughter resonated with greater abandon, and the connections, however ephemeral, felt undeniably tangible. Yet, in retrospect, and as a considerable number discover upon abstaining from the bottle, that purported lubrication proved to be little more than a thin, transient veneer that actively obstructed authentic, enduring bonds. While alcohol may indeed diminish inhibitions, it concurrently lowers our standards for genuine engagement. It grants us license to utter words we may later lament, to find amusement in jests that lack genuine wit, and to experience a fleeting sense of fellowship that dissipates with the dawn. These are not the bedrock upon which strong, supportive relationships are constructed. Rather, they are the ephemeral sparks of a fire that blazes brilliantly for a moment, yet offers no lasting warmth. Consider this. How many of those purportedly cherished companions, forged in the convivial atmosphere of a bar or party, remain in your life, or even vividly in your memory, a year hence? More often than not, the connections solidified under the influence are as fragile as the glassware that contains them. They are predicated on a shared state of intoxication, a temporary reprieve from the self and from the realities of daily existence. When that escape route is sealed and one is left standing in the stark, unvarnished clarity of sobriety, the foundation of those relationships often proves to have been illusory. The clandestine costs of alcohol extend insidiously into our social fabric, manufacturing an illusion of connection that can ultimately engender a profound sense of isolation. It is a potent, deceptive stratagem. It assuages the immediate pang of loneliness while subtly erecting barriers to genuine human communion. Upon my initial cessation of drinking, one of the most striking revelations was the subtle yet profound recalibration of my friendships. It was not an abrupt, cataclysmic rupture, but rather a gradual, gentle realignment. Those companions with whom I habitually shared drinks, those whose company I genuinely appreciated only after a few libations, began to recede. Our conversations felt stilted, devoid of the familiar effervescence. I would find myself seated amongst them, sober, as they recounted their latest escapades, and a palpable distance would emerge. It was akin to conversing in disparate tongues. They remained ensconced in a world where alcohol softened the edges and amplified the merriment, while I was embarking upon a new terrain, one requiring me to find my footing without that familiar crutch. This critical reevaluation of existing relationships represents a pivotal, and often arduous, facet of embracing a life unburdened by alcohol. It necessitates an unflinching honesty, not solely with oneself, but with those in one's orbit. It entails recognizing that not all connections are designed for perpetuity, particularly when one is undergoing a significant personal metamorphosis. Certain friendships, as I came to understand, were tethered to a former iteration of myself that no longer existed. They were predicated on shared habits, shared diversions, rather than shared values or authentic affection. The relinquishing of these relationships was not without its challenges. A poignant sadness, a sense of loss for the shared history, even if frequently steeped in alcohol, would surface. Yet, with each friendship that gently receded, a sense of burgeoning space emerged. Space for novel connections, for deeper affinities, for relationships that resonated with a more profound authenticity and sustenance. This process is not one of censure, nor is it about assigning culpability. It is about acknowledging that as we evolve, our social constellations often require a commensurate adjustment. If alcohol has been a central axis around which your life has revolved, it is inevitable that a significant portion of your social interactions will have been similarly oriented. When that linchpin is removed, the edifice constructed upon it may falter. Some relationships, fortified by mutual respect and shared interests that transcend the act of imbibing, will demonstrate remarkable resilience. These are the connections that will likely deepen, acquiring an even greater preciousness and offering enhanced support. You may rediscover a friend of many years, someone with whom you now achieve a genuine rapport, unclouded by intoxication. You might reconnect with family members with whom you had become estranged, finding them more accessible and understanding than you had ever dared to imagine. Then there are the new connections. For myself, and for countless others, the journey of sobriety frequently unveils a vibrant, supportive community of individuals who intimately comprehend the trials and tribulations of this path. These are not mere acquaintances. They evolve into a chosen family. They are the ones who celebrate your triumphs, offer a compassionate ear during arduous periods, and share in the unadorned, unadulterated joys of existence. Herein lies the true potency of sober connection. It is a bond forged from shared experience, mutual vulnerability, and an unwavering commitment to living a life of greater authenticity. This leads me to a crucial juncture, the cultivation of profound intimacy and trust. When engaged in drinking, our emotional availability is frequently compromised. We may be physically present, but our minds and emotions can be miles distant, adrift in a haze of alcohol. This renders the fostering of genuine intimacy, whether with a romantic partner, a child, a parent, or a close friend, exceedingly difficult. Alcohol erects a formidable barrier to true emotional communion. It can render us defensive, withdrawn, or prone to emotional excesses that bear little resemblance to our authentic inner selves. In sobriety, however, we reclaim access to the full spectrum of our emotions. We become more present, more attuned, and demonstrably more capable of offering genuine solace. Envision a dialogue with your partner where you are wholly engaged, listening with your entire being, and responding with empathy and understanding. Imagine the capacity to be truly present for your children, to immerse yourself in their world without the distraction of a drink or the lingering residue of one. This caliber of presence is the very essence of deep intimacy and unwavering trust. For couples, this transformation can be profound. Partners of those who have ceased drinking frequently report a seismic shift. They might articulate, "I feel as though I have my partner back," or they are more attentive, more loving, more present than they have ever been. This is not merely attributable to the absence of alcohol, but to the presence of a clearer, more grounded, and emotionally accessible individual. Shared sober pursuits, such as invigorating walks, collaborative culinary endeavors, or the exploration of new hobbies, forge novel, enduring memories. These experiences, untainted by alcohol, forge bonds that are both stronger and more meaningful, as they are intrinsically rooted in shared joy and mutual engagement. Beyond romantic partnerships, sobriety exerts a transformative influence on familial ties. For years, alcohol may have served as a wellspring of tension, misunderstanding, or estrangement within a family unit. Abstinence can unlock the avenues for candid conversations, for sincere apologies, and for a rekindled sense of connection. Parents may discover a heightened capacity for patience and engagement with their offspring. Siblings might unearth a novel depth of understanding and mutual support. The ability to present oneself, fully engaged and emotionally available, is a gift that reverberates through every stratum of our familial relationships. And then there is the extraordinary power of forging a sober community. This was an outcome I could scarcely have envisioned prior to relinquishing alcohol. I had once harbored the conviction that my social life would contract to a mere shadow of its former self, anticipating prolonged, solitary evenings. Instead, I discovered a world brimming with connection, purpose, and a profound sense of belonging. Support groups, whether formal entities like Alcoholics Anonymous or Smart Recovery, or more informal sober meetups, represent extraordinary conduits for discovering kindred spirits. Within these enclaves, one is enveloped by individuals who genuinely comprehend. They grasp the inherent struggles, the hard-won victories, and the daily dedication required to navigate a life liberated from alcohol. These are not merely individuals with whom one shares a libation. They are individuals with whom one shares the very fabric of life. You celebrate each other's triumphs, both grand and subtle. You offer solace amidst the inevitable adversities. You construct friendships founded upon shared values, common aspirations, and a profound, reciprocal respect for the collective journey. This sense of belonging is exceptionally potent. It assuages the void that alcohol so frequently leaves, but it does so with a substance far more profound and enduring. It is a connection that nourishes the soul, bestowing a sense of community that can be more resonant and life-affirming than any promise alcohol ever offered. One of the most exquisite facets of cultivating these sober connections is the power inherent in vulnerability. In the realm of drinking, vulnerability is often perceived as a deficiency. We shield ourselves behind a facade of bravado, jest, or an affectation of indifference. Alcohol can exacerbate this tendency, manifesting as either an overabundance of confidence and boastfulness, or a retreat into timidity and shame. However, in sobriety, vulnerability transforms into a formidable asset. When we possess the capacity to reveal our authentic selves, our struggles, our fears, and our aspirations, we implicitly invite others to reciprocate. This open, honest exchange forms the bedrock of true connection. I recall attending a support group meeting in the nascent stages of my sobriety. The prospect of speaking filled me with trepidation, my voice trembling. I recounted an experience from a particularly arduous day, describing a moment of overwhelming temptation. As I spoke, I observed heads nodding in unison around the room. Upon its conclusion, there was no trace of pity or judgment, but rather an overwhelming tide of comprehension and shared experience. Individuals shared their own analogous narratives, their own periods of doubt, and their strategies for surmounting them. In that instant, I felt profoundly seen, truly seen, for the first time in an age. That sensation of shared humanity, of not being adrift in my struggles, possessed a potency that dwarfed any intoxicant I had ever consumed. This vulnerability also facilitates profound reconciliation within relationships. When we can articulate with candor past grievances, the impact our drinking may have wrought, and when we can listen with open hearts to the experiences of others, we create fertile ground for healing. This stands in stark contrast to the often superficial or confrontational interactions that can transpire when alcohol is a participant. In sobriety, dialogues can attain greater depth, resonance, and ultimately, a more profound capacity for healing. Therefore, to address the query of how alcohol's perceived social lubricant effect actually impedes relationships, it engenders a superficial bond, rooted in a shared chemical state, rather than genuine compatibility. It attenuates inhibitions, but also erodes authentic self-expression, leading to interactions that are frequently forgettable or even regrettable. The specific mechanisms at play include the blunting of emotions, which obstructs genuine empathy, the distortion of perception, which precipitates misinterpretations and misunderstandings, and the reliance on an external substance for confidence, which impedes the development of the internal self-assurance requisite for authentic connection. What practical steps can we undertake? Firstly, embrace honesty. Acknowledge that your social life may necessitate a paradigm shift. Secondly, act with intention. Actively seek out sober activities and communities. Do not passively await connections. Pursue them with purpose. Thirdly, remain open. Be willing to share your narrative and to lend a receptive ear to others. Vulnerability is paramount. Fourthly, exercise patience. The cultivation of deep, meaningful relationships is an endeavor that requires time, irrespective of one's consumption habits. And fifthly, be kind to yourself. There will be moments of awkwardness, periods of solitude, but these are transient. Beyond the realm of romantic partnerships, sobriety profoundly influences familial bonds and friendships by necessitating a more authentic presence. Common obstacles include navigating ingrained habits and entrenched expectations, and at times, confronting the reality that certain relationships have reached their natural conclusion. Triumphs manifest in the form of rekindled closeness, emergent understanding, and the establishment of entirely new, sober-centric social circles. As we divest ourselves of the illusions surrounding alcohol's purported social benefits, we uncover a fundamental truth. Genuine connection is not discovered within a glass, but rather within the shared vulnerability, authentic presence, and unwavering support that a sober life empowers us to cultivate. This newfound depth in our relationships provides a robust foundation for the subsequent phase of our journey, the reclamation of our mental landscape. The clarity we attain through sobriety is not solely for personal benefit. It is a gift we can bestow upon those we cherish and a pathway toward constructing a life rich with authentic, enduring connection. 3. Finding authentic connections. For years, alcohol served as my perceived confidant in social arenas. The prospect of a party, or even a casual gathering with nascent acquaintances, didn't first prompt thoughts of attire or conversation starters. Instead, my initial consideration was always the quantity I would consume to achieve a state of loosening up. It felt akin to a potent elixir, bestowing upon me the courage to speak, to laugh, to feel the embrace of belonging. Yet, viewed through the lens of present clarity, the fog having lifted, I now recognize it was no elixir at all. It was a deception. It conjured an illusion of fellowship, a pale imitation of the profound resonance of genuine friendship. This is one of alcohol's hidden costs, the insidious notion that it enhances our sociability and charm, when in actuality, it merely diminishes our authentic selves, thereby eroding our capacity for true connection. In the throes of my drinking days, my interactions often devolved into a performance. I would erupt in laughter at jokes that scarcely merited a chuckle, or monologue about myself, convinced of my own captivating nature, when in reality, I was merely a conduit for filling the void, driven by a paralyzing fear of awkward silences. I would offer perfunctory nods to the pronouncements of others, my mind invariably preoccupied with the next libation or consumed by anxieties over recent pronouncements. It was an exhausting charade, entirely devoid of authentic connection. It resembled a tableau of individuals performing for one another, all veiled by a uniform, hazy conviviality. Authentic connection, I have come to understand, thrives in quietude. It is rooted in the act of being present. It demands a commitment to true listening rather than the mere anticipation of one's turn to speak. It is about truly perceiving the other, their unvarnished emotions, the subtle nuances of their expressions, and responding from a wellspring of genuine care. During my years of drinking, my senses were blunted. I became oblivious to the subtle cues, the incandescent spark in someone's eyes when discussing a cherished passion, or the almost imperceptible slump of their shoulders when weighed down by sorrow. Alcohol may have instilled a sense of bravado, but it simultaneously rendered me profoundly unobservant. My focus was consumed by the Sisyphean task of managing my own intoxication and anxieties, leaving no bandwidth for genuine engagement with another soul. Thus, how does alcohol's purported ease in social navigation demonstrably impede the cultivation of deep, enduring connections? The answer, quite simply, lies in its numbing effect. It assuages our anxieties, offering a fleeting solace, but in doing so, it also blunts our capacity for profound feeling, for complete empathy, and for genuine presence. Consider this: when plagued by worries of missteps or the discomfort of awkwardness, alcohol appears to smooth these jagged edges. But what are these rough edges? They are often the very constituents of our humanity, our timidity, our uncertainty, our inherent vulnerability. And it is within these tender moments, when we summon the courage to reveal our true selves, that authentic connection takes root. Alcohol whispers a directive to conceal these facets, to mask them with a manufactured confidence. And in this perpetual state of concealment, we forfeit the possibility of being truly seen, nor can we truly perceive others. Conversations transmute into a series of polite exchanges, superficial pleasantries, or even inebriated ramblings that vanish with the morning light. There is an absence of depth, a void of shared understanding that transcends the immediate moment. It is akin to erecting a dwelling upon shifting sands, outwardly stable for a time, yet incapable of withstanding any significant pressure and certainly not destined for permanence. The decision to relinquish alcohol brought with it the formidable challenge of navigating social landscapes in a state of sobriety. I vividly recall attending my friend Sarah's birthday celebration a few months post-abstinence. I was a quivering mess of nerves. The internal monologue was relentless. What will I do? How will I converse? Will I be the conspicuously sober individual relegated to the periphery? For the initial hour, I remained tethered to the vicinity of the hors d'oeuvres, cradling a club soda, my self-consciousness, a palpable weight. But then, a subtle metamorphosis occurred. I began to truly observe the people around me. I witnessed the effervescence that illuminated Sarah's face as her sister recounted a humorous anecdote. I detected the unfeigned warmth infusing John's voice as he offered a compliment on someone's attire. I found myself engaged in a genuine exchange with a new acquaintance regarding a shared literary experience, an interaction devoid of artifice or performance. We simply conversed, exchanged perspectives, even ventured into mild disagreement, and it felt right. It felt authentic. This observation leads us to the practical strategies an individual can employ to identify and nurture genuine connections once the reliance on alcohol for social lubrication ceases. The inaugural step is simply to present oneself. One must be willing to inhabit social settings, even when the initial experience is laced with discomfort. It is akin to tentatively testing the waters. A full plunge is not immediately requisite. Following this, and this is paramount, is the practice of mindful presence. Rather than fixating on one's own anxieties or formulating the next utterance, the endeavor is to direct one's entire focus toward the individual with whom one is conversing. Pose inquiries and truly absorb the responses. Attend to their nonverbal cues, the cadence of their voice. What are they truly conveying, beyond the literal words? This pivot in focus from the self to the other is transformative. Another indispensable step involves the reevaluation of existing relationships. This can be an arduous undertaking. Not all friendships are resilient enough to withstand the rigor of sobriety. If your primary bond with an individual was intrinsically linked to alcohol consumption, frequenting bars, engaging in wine nights, or simply convening for the express purpose of inebriation, you may discover that the bedrock of that connection was, in fact, the alcohol itself. When that element is removed, the bond may feel tenuous or even dissipate entirely. This is not necessarily a reflection of fault, it is simply an objective reality. It is akin to realizing that the adhesive binding two pieces of wood was only effective in its liquid state. Once solidified, their union dissolved. This is a poignant revelation, yet it also represents an opportunity. It liberates one to invest energy in relationships of greater substance, bonds forged upon shared values, mutual deference, and authentic affection, irrespective of the presence of alcohol. I recall a friend, whom I shall refer to as Mark, whose company I primarily sought within the confines of the pub. We would typically spend hours there engaged in conversations that spanned the spectrum from the profound to the trivial, invariably, with a few beers in us. Upon ceasing my consumption, I attempted to sustain the friendship, proposing alternatives such as coffee engagements or leisurely strolls. Mark consistently demurred, citing an abundance of commitments or expressing a longing for our familiar pub evenings. Gradually, the frequency of calls and messages dwindled, eventually ceasing altogether. It was a source of pain, yet I comprehended the underlying dynamic. Our connection was inextricably tethered to the pub environment. It exemplified one of alcohol's hidden costs, the insidious disguise of superficial acquaintances as profound friendships. Concurrently, however, I re-established contact with an old university friend, Emily, with whom I had lost touch for years. We had always shared a commonality of interests, though life's trajectory and geographical separation had created distance. Our renewed dialogue commenced with text messages, evolved into video calls, and culminated in a shared meal. The interaction flowed with effortless grace. We conversed for hours, not predicated on the need for alcohol to foster comfort, but on the exchange of our life narratives, our aspirations, and our struggles. It was a genuine connection, rooted in shared history and mutual curiosity, and it felt infinitely more enriching than my receding friendship with Mark. It was a manifestation of the principle, as noted in the transcript, of fewer, but better, friends. The potency of shared presence and vulnerability is a virtue I cannot overemphasize. When one is sober, one is unequivocally present. The mind is unclouded by the haze of alcohol, unburdened by the exertion of maintaining a fabricated persona. One can truly bear witness to the individual before them. One can perceive the subtle shifts in their countenance, the tremor in their voice when conveying something arduous. And when capable of such perception, one can respond with unadulterated empathy. One can offer words of solace, a shared moment of quietude, or a heartfelt laugh untainted by intoxication. This capacity for complete presence facilitates a more profound understanding and appreciation of others. It is akin to viewing the world in high definition after a protracted period of navigating through a blurred filter. Consider a time when an acquaintance, whom I shall call Lisa, was enduring a particularly agonizing romantic dissolution. Prior to my abstinence, my response might have been a platitude or a suggestion to seek solace in libations. However, in my sober state, I was able to simply sit with her. I could listen without judgment as she wept and articulated her pain. I could offer a steady presence, a comforting touch, and the quiet assurance of solidarity. This caliber of support, this profound human connection, is rendered unattainable when both individuals are dulled by alcohol. Sobriety empowers us to embody the friend we genuinely aspire to be, the kind of friend who can effect a meaningful difference in another's life. It is within these instances of shared vulnerability that the most robust bonds are meticulously forged. We come to realize that our individual tribulations do not isolate us, rather, they connect us to the universal tapestry of human experience. And the ability to offer and receive such connection, unhindered by the interference of alcohol, stands as one of sobriety's most profound endowments. This transition also ushers in the exhilarating prospect of cultivating new avocations and social constellations predicated on genuine enthusiasm. When alcohol is removed from the equation, the imperative to drink to enjoy activities evaporates. Suddenly, the universe of experiences unfurls in ways previously unimagined. In the past, attending a concert meant a preoccupation with procuring beverages, perhaps indulging in a moderate level of intoxication, to enhance the musical appreciation. Now, I can fully immerse myself in the music, the collective energy of the crowd, the artistry of the performers. I can discern the subtleties, the layers, the sheer brilliance on display. It is a more profound and engaging experience. This principle extends to every facet of life, from exploring new culinary establishments to visiting art exhibitions, to the simple act of embarking on a hike. Without alcohol serving as a crutch, one learns to appreciate these pursuits for their intrinsic value. One discovers what genuinely ignites joy, what sparks intellectual curiosity. And as one pursues these nascent interests, one naturally encounters individuals who share these passions. These are not individuals met in the convivial atmosphere of a bar, seeking a transient escape. These are individuals who are genuinely animated by the same pursuits. Bonds are formed over a shared admiration for painting, a fervent dedication to traversing hiking trails, or a deep fascination with a particular historical epoch. These are the foundational elements of authentic connection, constructed upon shared exhilaration and a yearning for genuine engagement. I recall experiencing a profound sense of ennui during my initial period of abstinence. My established routines were intricately interwoven with drinking. I was compelled to actively seek out new pursuits to fill my time. I commenced attending a local book club, an activity I had long harbored a desire to engage in, but had never felt possessed the requisite time or mental clarity to pursue. Initially, I was reticent, but as we delved into discussions of the texts, exchanging our interpretations and insights, a sense of belonging began to coalesce. These were individuals who cherished literature, who relished profound discourse, and who possessed a curiosity and thoughtfulness akin to my own. It represented a fundamentally different mode of social interaction, one that left me feeling invigorated and connected, rather than depleted and anxious. It illuminated the fact that alcohol's hidden costs extended beyond mere depletion, encompassing also the unforeseen discoveries it had precluded. The clarity engendered by sober relationships is likewise instrumental. When interacting with individuals who are themselves sober, or who are at least endeavoring to be present, the potential for more meaningful conversations arises. One can engage with complex ideas, share intimate insights, and cultivate a deeper mutual comprehension. These exchanges transcend mere temporal occupation. They are conduits for growth, for learning, and for the fortification of friendships' bonds. It is a qualitative distinction that fundamentally alters the landscape of human connection. As we nurture these richer, more authentic connections, we begin to perceive the profound transformation occurring within our internal topography. The clarity and self-awareness gleaned from sober relationships pave the pathway for a more profound exploration of our own minds and emotions, leading us toward an understanding of the true essence of our inner world. 4. Discovering joy in sobriety. For a considerable epoch, I harbored the misconception that happiness was inextricably entwined with the ritual of a drink. Alcohol, in my estimation, served as the veritable key, unlocking mirth, loosening the tongue, and imbuing even the most pedestrian evening with an effervescent sparkle. Social engagements, in particular, seemed an insurmountable challenge without its aid. I would observe individuals at gatherings, their laughter unrestrained, and ponder, that is precisely what I lack. I require that infusion. The prospect of navigating a conversation, or more dauntingly, an entire night, bereft of that prop, felt both formidable and, frankly, mortifying. It was a clandestine toll I had implicitly agreed to pay, the currency of genuine connection, bartered for a chemical expedient. Yet, the astonishing revelation that dawned upon me is this: that perceived social lubricant is often a mere phantasm. The ease it purports to bestow is borrowed, ephemeral, and ultimately, it erects a formidable barrier. When one is sober, one is compelled to present oneself in one's unvarnished state. There is no sanctuary behind the glass. This may sound terrifying, and indeed, it felt so initially. I recall standing at assemblies, my hands feeling ungainly, my mind a frantic carousel of what to articulate. It was akin to standing naked amidst a throng. Nevertheless, as weeks bled into months, a subtle metamorphosis occurred. I began to perceive the qualitative depth of my interactions. Instead of a multitude of fleeting, superficial exchanges lubricated by alcohol, I found myself engaging in a select few, more profound conversations. I cultivated the art of attentive listening, of being fully present, and of articulating my authentic self with a candor I had previously suppressed, trading it for the perceived persona I felt obligated to embody with a drink in hand. This transformation was not about an overnight metamorphosis into a gregarious extrovert. It was about uncovering the truth that genuine connection does not necessitate a chemical catalyst. It demands vulnerability, an insatiable curiosity, and the fortitude to be truly seen. The pressure to perform socially dissipated with the evaporation of the alcohol. I came to understand that the true effervescence of life resided not in boisterous laughter or forced jests, but in the quiet communion that could transpire between two souls truly connecting. It was found in the resonant silence, in the genuine concern reflected in another's eyes when I divulged a struggle, or in the unadulterated pleasure of a laugh prompted by genuine humor, not merely the manufactured merriment of shared indulgence. This stands as a profound facet of alcohol's hidden costs, the insidious illusion that we require external accoutrements to be deemed likable or to forge bonds, when in actuality, our authentic essences are infinitely more captivating. Beyond the social sphere, I embarked on a journey of rediscovering aspects of myself that had been interred beneath the strata of years of imbibement. Hobbies that had once been my solace began to feel like distant echoes, remnants of a life lived by another. Painting, for instance, had always been a cherished pursuit. I would dedicate hours to the interplay of brushes and canvas, but in my years of heavy drinking, the experience became fragmented. I would initiate a project only to be waylaid by distraction, perhaps reaching for a drink to loosen up and spark creativity, only to awaken the following morn to a half-finished, uninspired artifact accompanied by a throbbing headache. The inherent joy had been supplanted by a sense of obligation, and the creative ember had been effectively dampened by the insatiable craving for artificial stimulation. My cessation of drinking was not merely an act of abstinence. It was a reclamation of that vital space, that precious time, and that potent mental energy. Abruptly, my evenings were liberated. My mornings were no longer shrouded in a pervasive mental fog. I found myself drawn, with a tentative hesitancy at first, back to my easel. And what I discovered was nothing short of astonishing. The colors appeared more vivid, the textures more richly defined. My focus sharpened to an unprecedented degree. I could immerse myself in the creative process for hours on end, not in pursuit of a tangible outcome, but for the sheer, unadulterated delight of creation itself. The joy was not derived from the alcohol that had once been an inseparable companion to the activity, but from the activity in its purest form, experienced with a lucid mind and a spirit fully present. This epiphany cascaded into myriad other facets of my existence. Reading, which had devolved into a laborious chore, metamorphosed into a profound form of escapism. Music, once relegated to the background hum of my drinking rituals, now resonated through my senses, weaving intricate melodies and potent lyrical narratives. Even the seemingly mundane act of savoring a meal became an experience of heightened richness. Previously, food had often served merely as a preamble to further libations, a means of fortifying my stomach. Now, I relished each morsel, appreciating the nuanced flavors, the varied textures, and the artistry of the chef. These were not monumental, world-altering events. They were subtle, tranquil moments of profound appreciation. They were the hidden felicities that alcohol's hidden costs had so assiduously obscured, perpetuating the fallacy that life necessitated a constant buzz to maintain its intrigue. Perhaps the most transformative shift has occurred within the sanctuary of my inner world. Alcohol, for me, had been a relentless emotional tempest. One moment I would feel an unassailable sense of invincibility, the next, I would be consumed by a gnawing anxiety and a profound self-doubt. It was utterly exhausting. My emotional equilibrium was dictated by the presence or absence of alcohol, and the cyclical nature of dependence ensured that true peace remained an elusive phantom. I was in a perpetual state of internecine conflict with my own thoughts and feelings, or desperately seeking to anesthetize them. The pervasive insecurity that alcohol's hidden costs had so insidiously cultivated was a crushing burden. Sobriety has ushered in a level of emotional equipoise I once deemed unattainable. This is not to suggest that life ceases to present challenges or that difficult emotions vanish entirely. Life, in its inherent unpredictability, continues to deliver its share of unexpected blows. However, I now possess the intrinsic capacity to navigate these emotional currents. I can experience sadness without succumbing to despair. I can feel anger without erupting in destructive fury. I can experience anxiety without being utterly consumed by it. This newfound clarity affords me a deeper, more nuanced understanding of myself. I can discern my triggers, recognize my ingrained patterns, and respond with a greater measure of wisdom and a diminished inclination toward reactivity. This inner tranquility is not an absence of feeling, it is a profound presence of equanimity. It is the quiet assurance that arises from the knowledge that one is equipped to confront whatever life may present, without the desperate need to escape from one's own being. This enhanced capacity for emotional regulation directly fuels a more profound sense of self-awareness. I comprehend my motivations with greater clarity, my needs with a sharper discernment. This empowers me to establish robust boundaries, to make choices that resonate with my core values, and to construct a life that feels more authentic and imbued with purpose. The vacillation and insidious insecurity that had plagued me for so long have receded significantly. I approach my decisions with a newfound confidence, my identity more firmly anchored. This inner calm serves as a wellspring of profound joy, a steady, underlying hum of contentment that permeates all aspects of my existence. It stands in stark opposition to the manic highs and crushing lows that alcohol once orchestrated, and it is immeasurably more sustainable and deeply satisfying. The physical and mental lucidity that accompanies sobriety is another precious gift that continues to unfold. Undeniably, the obvious advantages are readily apparent: enhanced sleep, a surge in energy levels, the shedding of unwanted physical weight. But beyond these tangible benefits, my cognitive faculties have become remarkably sharper. My creativity, which I had mistakenly believed to be intrinsically linked to the nebulous haze of alcohol, has, in fact, blossomed with extraordinary vigor. I find myself considerably more productive, capable of sustaining focus for extended durations, and demonstrably more adept at problem solving. Ideas now flow with an unimpeded fluidity, and the capacity to bring projects to fruition bestows a profound sense of accomplishment that alcohol could never hope to replicate. It is as if a persistent, obscuring fog has been irrevocably lifted, revealing a landscape I had previously failed to perceive. Colors possess a heightened vibrancy, sounds resonate with greater clarity, and the world at large feels more acutely engaging. This is not merely a matter of experiencing improved physical health. It is about engaging with life through a lens of heightened awareness and profound appreciation. The subtle majesty of a nascent sunrise, the intricate tessellations of leaves adorning a tree, the quiet, rhythmic pulse of a bustling thoroughfare, these are the nuances that might have previously escaped my notice or been dulled by my former habits. Now they register with an astonishing new intensity. This heightened engagement with the surrounding world serves as a constant, quiet source of delight, a testament to the insidious manner in which alcohol's hidden costs pilfer our capacity to fully inhabit our own lives. This realization leads me to the very core of what joy truly signifies. For an extended period, I conflated joy with external stimulation, the exhilaration of a party, the thrill of a novel experience, or, of course, the intoxicating ascent provided by a drink. I subscribed to the belief that happiness was a passive occurrence, something that happened to me, typically precipitated by an external catalyst. Sobriety has imparted to me the wisdom that genuine joy is an intrinsic state. It is cultivated from within, nurtured by self-awareness, a spirit of gratitude, and an unwavering sense of purpose. It is not about the ceaseless pursuit of fleeting highs, but rather about the deliberate construction of a profound and enduring foundation of contentment. I vividly recall the nascent stages of sobriety, when the conspicuous absence of alcohol rendered life, on its superficial plane, somewhat more subdued. The era of raucous nights had concluded, as had the spontaneous, alcohol-fueled escapades that invariably promised a surfeit of delights, yet often delivered precious little. My companions continued to partake, and at times, a pang of apprehension, a feeling of being left behind, would surface. Yet, it was then that I observed the subtle yet significant internal shift. While my external circumstances might have appeared less effervescent, my internal experience became immeasurably richer. I found myself possessed of a greater peace, a more profound presence, and a more authentic happiness than I had ever known during my years of drinking. This paradox, the external perception of life as more mundane and less exciting, juxtaposed with an internal experience of profound satisfaction and happiness, stands as one of the most potent lessons sobriety has bestowed upon me. So how does one actively unearth this joy, rather than passively awaiting its arrival? It is a journey, not a static destination. It commences with a conscious decision to engage with life through a fundamentally different paradigm. It entails actively seeking out experiences that nourish the soul rather than merely sedate it. It requires embracing discomfort rather than succumbing to the urge to flee from it. It involves the diligent practice of gratitude for life's smallest blessings, the celebration of incremental progress, and the cultivation of self-compassion on those days when the path feels particularly arduous. The practical steps are as diverse as humanity itself and deeply personal in their manifestation. For some, it may involve the rekindling of an abandoned passion, akin to my own return to painting. For others, it might manifest as dedicated volunteer work, the acquisition of a novel skill, an immersion in the restorative embrace of nature, or simply the allocation of dedicated time for introspective contemplation. The objective is to fill the void left by alcohol not with superficial distractions, but with pursuits that imbue life with genuine meaning and profound fulfillment. It is about cultivating an insatiable curiosity about oneself and the world, and approaching each unfolding day with an open heart and an unyielding willingness to learn. The cognitive and emotional recalibrations that facilitate this deepening appreciation are both subtle and profoundly impactful. When the incessant chemical interference of alcohol is meticulously excised, our brains and bodies embark on a restorative journey of healing. This process of regeneration reinstates our innate capacity for experiencing pleasure and fosters a resilient spirit. We regain the ability to feel genuine emotions without their being artificially amplified or unduly suppressed by the influence of alcohol. Our judgment becomes demonstrably clearer, enabling us to make more judicious choices that invariably contribute to our overall well-being. The anxiety that alcohol had once served to temporarily mask is supplanted by a more manageable, and indeed, a more constructively useful, awareness of our surroundings and our internal states. This allows us to confront challenges with a greater measure of composure and to savor positive experiences with a heightened intensity. This newfound joy is not a fleeting sensation, but rather a steadfast, internal wellspring. It is the quiet satisfaction that accompanies waking without the burden of regret, the simple pleasure derived from a mind unclouded, the profound connection forged in the crucible of an honest conversation. As we continue to navigate this transformed landscape, we shall endeavor to examine how this internal shift exerts a direct influence upon our outward interactions and the very fabric of our daily existence, ultimately prompting us to contemplate the profound ramifications of our choices on our relationships and our rightful place within the grand tapestry of the world. Conclusion: for too long, we have been ensnared by a shimmering mirage, a seductive promise of ease, connection, and escape that alcohol dangles before us. It whispers of amplified joy, a frictionless social glide, a temporary balm for life's inevitable rough edges. Yet, as these pages have meticulously explored, this beguiling narrative is a meticulously constructed artifice, a sophisticated marketing campaign for a substance that, beneath its polished veneer, exacts a profound and frequently imperceptible toll. Beyond the ephemeral sting of the hangover, the insidious erosion of our physical well-being constitutes alcohol's silent cost. It is the stealthy assault on our liver, the disruption of restorative sleep, the attenuation of our immune defenses, a gradual depletion of our very life force. The hidden cost to our mental landscape is perhaps the most insidious. What commences as an endeavor to quiet the clamor often precipitates a perpetual haze, where creativity is stifled, decision-making is obscured, and the very clarity we desperately seek recedes into a distant memory. Within our relationships, this unseen expense erects a formidable barrier to genuine intimacy. The alcohol-fueled camaraderie, while seemingly effervescent, frequently conceals a deeper incapacity for authentic connection, leaving us feeling more adrift amidst the throng. Ultimately, the most devastating unseen cost is the theft of our potential for true fulfillment. Alcohol purports to deliver happiness, but instead bestows a fleeting simulacrum, diverting us from the authentic pursuits that hold the promise of lasting satisfaction. These are not typically dramatic, headline-grabbing calamities for most, but rather a slow, persistent drip, a gradual dimming of our inner luminescence, often so subtle that its origin eludes our recognition. However, within this stark reckoning lies an immense, untapped power. The power to perceive beyond the illusion, to acknowledge the true price of admission, and to reclaim dominion over our own lives. This recognition is not an terminus, but a profound genesis. The deliberate choice to relinquish the bottle is not an act of surrender, but a courageous testament to self-love, a conscious affirmation to prioritize well-being over transient intoxication. Beyond the immediate somatic and cognitive recuperation, sobriety unlocks a deeper, more resilient wellspring of joy. It is the quiet contentment of a mind unclouded, the profound resonance of a heart that is truly present, the unshakable conviction that arises from living in authentic alignment with one's deepest self. We rediscover the simple, unadorned pleasures, the vibrant hues of existence that were muted by alcohol's pervasive influence. Our bodies commence their restorative journey, our minds regain their keen edge, and our relationships deepen, forged on the bedrock of honesty and unfeigned care. We unearth a renewed sense of purpose, an enhanced capacity to confront challenges with fortitude and to savor moments of unadulterated happiness. The path that diverges from the bottle is not a trajectory of privation, but one of abundance, an abundance of clarity, of connection, of vitality, of life itself. It is an invitation to unearth the extraordinary potential that lies dormant when we are bound by the unseen costs. By discerning and rejecting the illusions that alcohol perpetuates, we can cast off the invisible burdens and step into a life of profound authenticity and enduring fulfillment. The true cost of alcohol is the life unlived while we remain under its spell. The reward for liberation is the life we were always destined to inhabit. The journey commences now. Reclaim your existence, one clear breath, one genuine moment, one authentic choice at a time.